Hey there guys, BlackPanthaa here, and welcome to a video once again on these two magical games that are going to be coming out later this year. And I really wanted to just do a slightly in-depth comparison of these two games now that I've played both of them, experienced both of them in some shape or form. Now, it's been actually 2 months since the last video on this topic, but I've played 2 betas of The Crew, and I've played the demo of Horizon 2, as well as seeing many videos on each, looking at all the different areas, and obviously I have had more experience with The Crew. But with Horizon 2, I think it's easy to predict the rest of the game. But as I said, this is in no way an in-depth review. Do not let this 100% confirm that you should get one over the other. This is literally going to be me comparing the two and saying which is different and why, suggesting slight improvements that could be made to each of them. And, you know, just going off that. And as I said, in-depth reviews for these games will come out about a week after they launch. And I'll obviously do one for Drive Club as well and such, but that'll come later. So subscribe if you want to see those. Now, very quickly get into it then. So these two games are probably at the top of my list for racing games this year. The Crew are kind of at the top of this for some main reasons, which are the map size, the customization, the basically going back to what Underground was and expanding on that even more so, and even listening to fan feedback, improving the game from the beta, and just all these things in conjunction. So that's the word I was looking for. But yeah, so as I said, 2 betas of The Crew and 1 demo of Horizon 2 and some videos of both of them kind of show that the map in The Crew is much more varied, and that's the main piece for me, I think, that's gonna mainly kind of separate these two games. The size of these games, not only just the map, but the map plays a big part in this. Now, in Horizon 2, you're going to be driving around France, which is awesome. We've not really had France and Italy in a racing game before. It's Europe, not really have any European racing games, and it's very different. And one of these things is a little bit annoying, I'm not going to lie, and the fact that a lot of this to do with the handling model as well, you can cut across a lot of the roads and fields, should I say, in Horizon 2 when doing a street race. I think this is one thing that's quite annoying because of how small these roads are, and it's designed, I guess the road design is similar to, say, Need for Speed Rivals. It's in no way tap the brake handling model, obviously. It's still the Forza 5 similar handling model, but it encourages you to cut across corners. It encourages you to fly across fields when you're in a hypercar. Now, I can understand there's going to be different races that aren't going to tell you to cut across fields in, say, a hypercar. There's going to be specific events for specific type of car setup and that sort of thing. But there's going to be a lot of races that really you will get an advantage for cutting across corners. Now, this is fine, really, in single player if you think about it, but I would prefer there to be a way for me to not take these shortcuts, because even the AI are going to take these shortcuts with drivatars included. And this is probably one of my main worries, especially online, is if I want to do a street-specific race, there's not going to be any races really that, not many races at all anyway, that I can stop people cutting across corners, because there's going to be corners people can cut across where checkpoints aren't, so they can just literally drive across a field and they're ahead of me, even though they're going off-road in a Bugatti Veyron and I'm in some other better turning car. But yeah, that's one worry. Whereas in The Crew, that's not really going to happen. You're literally following a very closed route a lot of the time. It's a big open road on a closed route, if that makes sense. You're not going to be cutting across little bits of grass inside The Crew like you are in Horizon 2 on kind of just thinking of it, because the checkpoints are very streamlined. You know what you need to be doing. You're going to be cutting across parts, but it's going to slow you down a lot. That's the main reason it worries me in Horizon 2, because if you're driving a Bugatti Veyron 200 miles an hour on the road, you go off-road, you're still going to be powering forward and going even to 210 because you went off-road. It's not going to slow you down. Whereas if you take a street class, a performance spec car inside The Crew off-road, you will notice at least a 50-mile-an-hour drop, at least a 100-mile-an-hour drop, depending on how fast these cars go. And that's what I like. Whereas if you go in an off-road car, they're still actually better on the road than they are off-road, because that's what cars are good for. But they still have an advantage over the cars that go on the road, obviously off-road. So that kind of makes sense, if you know what I mean. It worries me that people are going to cut across and stuff, and moving on from just that, that's probably my main worry. But kind of, I guess that's something that I've got to really experience the whole game to be 100% confirmed on, to be, you know, 1,000,000% sure that that's going to worry me, but hopefully it's not, and we'll see how we get on with the full game with that. But moving on to the next thing here, the map variety is one major aspect that kind of lets me down on Horizon 2 as well. Because it's set in one location, mainly Europe, southern France, and Italy, everything is pretty much the same. You're going to see fields and fields and fields and fields. The only difference is one part of fields are going to be dusty, and some fields are green. And it's got an airfield, and lots of highway, and that's it. It's got a small town that's about 20 streets long, and it's that kind of annoys me a little bit. You know, a lot of the roads that connect these cities are very, very empty and dead. It's a highway, which you can kind of make, you know, make sense to connect it by a highway, but around those highways are just fields and fields and fields and fields and fields that you're not going to want to drive across because all the fields are exactly the same. Now, granted, you may want to take across those because it's going to take you less time to go across, you know, which is weird because you're going to be driving a Bugatti Veyron and all of a sudden you went, oh yeah, I'm just going to go off-road because it's quicker than going on the highway. But yeah, you can do that, which is pretty cool. But other than that, you're not really going to use it. You're not going to appreciate it like you do inside the crew. There's a lot of places in Horizon 2 that you can't drive also. Say, for example, inside Horizon 2, there's a lot of invisible walls, which we were told there weren't going to be many invisible walls at all, or if any, because when I went to a lot of staircases, to a lot of shortcuts that looked like shortcuts, and I went over some jumps and there was a little tiny wall there, I'd hit an invisible wall, as you've seen in some of my videos on the demo, that kind of distract me from the gameplay. Obviously, I can rewind and take it, you know, again from a different angle inside some cases, but in multiplayer, where I'm going to spend most of my time, I'm not going to be able to do that. Whereas in the crew, invisible walls are not a thing. If you see somewhere, you can drive there. There's lots of mountains and there's lots of bloody other places that you can drive that you would think like, why did they even design this for me to drive on? You know, it's crazy. Whereas in, as you say, Horizon 2, there's a lot of areas where it's like, you know, I can't drive there, and it's kind of disappointing because it could have been a nice little shortcut. It could have been a nice little jump. It could have been a nice little fun thing to do in certain types of cars and test with new tuning and that sort of thing. So obviously, one more thing to talk about on this kind of topic is that Horizon 2, the handling model, I would say is actually a little bit easier than the crew in the sense of getting to grips with it. You know, you're going to pick up the controller, and if you've played any Forza game, any racing game at all, you'll automatically know how to drive in Horizon 2. It's a little bit slippery, but it's got more traction than the crew. At the beginning in the crew, what I like about the crew is a lot of cars are very, very, very different from each other. If you turn in with a little tiny tuner, it's going to spin in on itself. If you turn in with a muscle car, it's probably not going to do that. All-wheel drive changes things, and whereas in Horizon 2, everything feels a little bit similar and a little bit the same. It's very, very easy to put your finger down on the accelerator on Horizon 2 on a rear-wheel drive car in like a Cohen's egg and not spin out at all, ever. And that's good in a sense that because of these types of roads, you're not really going to want to be driving because it'll be like the bloody Nürburgring for every single race. But it kind of annoys me a little bit because it's very, very easy to get into, even with putting all the settings on the hardcore of the hardcorest settings. And in, obviously, the crew, there's a very steep learning curve, and that in some aspects may be good, but at the same time it might scare people away. So that's one thing that Horizon 2 I think does a little bit better. I think having the handling model that has the ability to turn certain settings off and such is an advantage, but as I said, it's still a little bit too easy when you turn all those settings off, whereas the crew, once you learn about what car you like to drive and how you drive that car and not powering through every single corner and rear-wheel drive car that's very, very light, you kind of come to learn that car, and you become more attached to that car, I think, whereas in Horizon 2 it just feels like another version of the car you just had. Even if it's a big meaty car or a little tiny little thing, it feels very similar. But those are the main points I wanted to speak about these two games. They're very, very similar. They're both very, very awesome, and I'm going to be picking up both of these. But I'd like to know your thoughts down below in the comments of having played both of these or having played one or the other. If you've got any questions for me, I'll be sure to kind of cover them in the future and maybe cover them in the reviews that I plan to release when the games come out. But I wanted to put these points on the table just so you know, in case you're on the fence of buying one before the other, or you can only get one for now, or that sort of thing. just let me know what you think of kind of this video, and let me know by giving it a like if you liked it, dislike it if you dislike it, and that sort of jazz. Anyway, thank you very much for joining us for this video. Hopefully you found out some more information, and I'll see you in the next video, guys. Peace.